Having been there, and a few of my colleagues can attest to that, I believe that if Eskom has survived this last 14 to 16 months, I'm confident we will turn the organization around. But it's not going to be overnight, as the chairman has said. So, the reality is this: I'm not here to present wonderful results as highlighted, and more importantly, the financial numbers are not going to turn around overnight. Our outlook, based on our assumptions, taking into account all the factors for Eskom and balancing what Eskom needs, together with that of the economy and the consumers, I believe that our performance will continue to deteriorate in the short term, but the idea is within the next 3 years to firstly stabilize it to at least a break-even position, and then to improve in terms of long-term sustainability. So I think that's the outlook from where I see it as from a finance perspective. So getting back to the numbers, before I even show you the numbers, the reality is that you should not be surprised with what the numbers are saying. Eskom, and I'm not blaming the regulator here. Yes, the regulator has a tough decision to decide what is efficient and a fair return. But an organization like Eskom, if we are applying for close to 20% and you get a decision of 5%, effectively the difference in revenue allowance for this 18-19 financial year was 23 billion rand. You can't extract 23 billion of operating costs out of an organization overnight and still be operationally sustainable. I think this is the balance that we need to create as we embark on this journey when we get into MYPD4 and when we deal with upcoming RCAs. But from our perspective, we must be introspective and look at ourselves in the mirror and make sure that we can stand up there and say, okay, we are efficient, and in these numbers there are no funnies. Yes, as you've seen from the chairman and the CEO, there's still a number of investigations that are ongoing, and we'll look to find that and deliver those savings. But the reality is this: an organization is not sustainable, one, if it's selling its product below of what it costs on an efficient basis, but secondly, you need to be paid for that product that you are selling, and that's one of the challenges for Eskom. Our real debts that have escalated to 17 billion rand, and together with some of the other outstanding arrears. Eskom's balance sheet, you can see the challenge that's facing us. We cannot be a bank to other customers. We need to firstly look after ourselves and ensure that we can deal with the operations to produce the electricities to improve the financial situation. So yes, numbers are disappointing, and more importantly, you will see this time we give a glimpse of what you can expect by March 19, and that's the transparency that the board wants, and as the executive, that's what we committed towards. So let me move on in terms of the performance. You will see all the ratios are trending negatively. If I just touch on EBITDA margin, it's dropped from 31% in 2017 September to 28.8% now in 2018. But importantly, Eskom is a seasonal business. We make our money in the first 6 months of the year, and that's driven on 2 or 3 key points. One, we generally have more volumes in the first half because of the winter season. Secondly, we know the tariffs are higher in the first 6 months in terms of winter tariffs compared to summer tariffs, and we tend to do more of our maintenance in the second half of the year. And if anyone looks at Eskom's numbers, when you compare what we've disclosed for the interims and where we landed in March, there is then a reduction or erosion of the profits that Eskom would have disclosed after 6 months compared to year end. And in this presentation, you will see that effectively, as Pakamani has alluded to, we literally broke even up until September. Now, the point is the second half of the year is a loss-making environment for Eskom. So there should be no surprises come March 2019 when Eskom will disclose a loss. And I'll touch on what we assumed in our budget, but we know assumptions do change from when you did a budget in February and where we're sitting now. With all the operational challenges on the generation performance, on getting the stock levels back to minimal days, as well as now we've seen in the recent few weeks, the need to meet supply and demand and run open cycle gas turbines. Those things don't come for free. It comes at a cost, which puts further pressure on our financial performance. So you will see there from a financial ratio perspective, it will deteriorate to March 19, but more importantly, where Eskom is today, if I just touch on debt service cover ratio, we're sitting at 0.6 at the end of September 2018, and as at March 19, it will drop further. You want the debt service cover ratio to be 1, which means you generate enough cash from operations to pay for the interest and meet the capital repayments on your debt. As long as you're below that, it means, as the chairman said, we are borrowing to make good of the previous borrowings. In a personal capacity, the analogy is you're using one credit card to pay for the other credit card. That is not sustainable for any organization going forward. So if I move on, in terms of the actual finances, if we touch on the revenue, you can see that September to September there's been a growth from 95.5 billion to 98 billion, 3%. Now, one will ask the question, if we were awarded a tariff on average of 5.23, why is it not 5.23? And there are two key contributing factors. One, the sales volumes are down year on year by 0.8%. And the second factor is during this financial year, we've brought in and accounted for IFRS 15. That's the treatment of revenue from customers. Effectively, the standard requires Eskom, where customers are categorized as potential problems or defaulting customers, whereas in the past we may have assumed a certain probability of collection and recorded as revenue recognized. This standard requires those customers to be treated on a cash basis. So effectively, our defaulting municipalities and our Soweto customers, we now treat them on a cash basis. That will be disclosed in the revenue line. I guess linked to that, as alluded to earlier, was if there are arrear debts and a solution is not provided from a government perspective, the more and more arrear debts escalate, especially on the municipalities going forward. That means we don't recognize it as revenue until we receive that. So I think that's an important point to understand and how we track that going forward. The second change in terms of what we've brought from a IFRS perspective was financial instruments. That's been a negligible adjustment during this, bringing that on board in this financial year. Other income, you see there, it's increased by 130%. We've mentioned that we've recovered the money from McKinsey, the 902 million rand. Effectively, what we've done, we've disclosed it as part of the other income category, and that's the big contributing factor. Now, we talked about our operating costs. I think what you will see there under primary energy, although the total year-on-year escalation is 12%, if one looks at our own coal costs, that has increased by 7% year-on-year, and the IPP purchase cost has grown by 29% from 2017 to 2018. However, one must acknowledge that the volumes from IPP, what they delivered, also escalated by 25% over the period. When you get to employee benefits, that's a 12% adjustment from 15 billion to 16.9. And the main factors there has been, one, the settlement with our union labor force. More importantly, from a management perspective, middle management, we've granted them an inflationary increase, and senior management had got no increase for this financial year. Included in that elements of where we had temporary staff in our subsidiaries, in terms of the Labour Relations Act, we needed to bring some of that into our books on a permanent basis, as well as the once-off adjustment when we agreed our 3-year wage settlement for our union labour force. I think what is important to highlight is that the other operating costs, and this is the point, is what's in our control. We must try to keep that as close to inflation as possible, and you'll see there is a slight savings year on year, a reduction from 9.5 billion last year September to 8.9 billion in this year's numbers. So from an earnings before interest and tax, it's a slight deterioration by 4%, but the trick here to Eskom's sustainability is what happens below that line, and this is linked to the combination of the debt that's currently sitting at 419 billion rand on our balance sheet, and that's reflected in your finance costs, especially as we commission and complete Medupi and Kusile. That reflects a 37% escalation from 10 billion September 17 to the 13.7. And then the depreciation, which is coupled with the commissioning of not only the generation assets, but your network assets over the period, which shows then an increase by 18%. Now, the reality is this: as we complete the build program and as you bring on more assets, and more importantly, you maintain the existing 40,000 megawatts in generation as well as the networks, the pressure on depreciation will continuously increase, and that finance cost, as we borrow more to execute the required capex program, and when you commission, you can no longer capitalize, you will see that the finance costs will grow going forward. So the trick is to ensure that your earnings is sufficient to at least cover those escalations in depreciation and finance costs. And now one will say, but depreciation is a non-cash flow item. That is correct. But you'll see even from the cash flow statement, we are not generating enough cash from operation to meet our debt service commitments. So I've touched on the big items there. Let's move on. I think this is important just to highlight again what's the growth in our primary energy. Eskom's own coal costs have increased by 1.9 billion from September 17 to 18, and the IPP costs by 2.4 billion. I think also to link it to the production that we get from IPPs, it's the 4.23%, and if you average that out as a cents per kilowatt, as at September, it averages out to about 212 cents per kilowatt hour. The balance sheet effectively at the moment is, as we grow our asset base and bring plant online, that is effectively funded through debt from a balance sheet perspective. And you'll see that the growth in property, plant and equipment of 31 billion is effectively linked to our growth in borrowings of the 52 billion from the 367 to the 419 billion rand where we sit currently. And I think what is also reflected, which is positive on this set in terms of the financial position. Last year at this time, and Andre Pillay, our treasurer, will recall, we could not access the markets domestically, and we even struggled internationally. What has happened in the past few months after the board has come online, we've now managed to have access to the local markets and continuous support from the international markets. I think that is a great positive, and that is why we are sitting with a cash balance of 17 billion compared to the 8.5 of last year. And I think this is what it really comes down to. You know, if in the future I would want to only present this slide because this is the reality of where Eskom is. We've generated cash from operations of 26.7 billion, and our debt servicing requirement was 45 billion, which left us with a shortfall of 18.5 for the first 6 months. Now let us also remind you that in February we raised the 20 billion from various institutions. The agreement was that we repay that at the end of August. So sitting in that number of 45 billion is the 20 billion rand repayment. And then included in that is interest cash costs of around 18 billion rand. There's the acquisition of our property, plant and equipment, and it does show the amount of debt that we've raised in this period. Now, if you just think about it, if our EBITDA is at 40 billion rand and we've got debt of 420 billion, a simplistic interest calculation will say on 400 billion, your entire earnings will be used to cover the interest bill. However, we know that once you have a debt commitment, you also have capital to repay. And we need that earnings to increase to help us then meet that capital repayments. So on an average life of about, or tenure of 10 years, on 400 billion, it means almost 40 billion per annum in terms of capital repayments. So effectively, that is the challenge and what we need to solve, not only as Eskom, but as a country. How do we ensure that the operation cash flows are sufficient to cover the debt service commitment? But to be sustainable, we also want to take that further and ensure that you do have some cash from operations to deal with your normal, I would call more operational capex, like outage capex that is required. It should be funded from operations and not just borrowed for in the debt markets. Arrear debts, I don't want to touch on this. I think the only point I want to highlight here is, yes, we always speak about what's outstanding, but let us also acknowledge that the majority of our customers, you will see their top customers 100% payment rate, large power users, small power users 99%. The defaulting municipalities, their payment levels are sitting at 38%, and that's the challenge we need to resolve, not only from Eskom, but more a country perspective. In terms of our debt, I think the reality is this: when you're sitting across the table with investors, based on our financial situation, and more importantly, many of the uncertainties that still need to be agreed and concluded, it's very difficult for them to put money into Eskom without requesting the guarantees from government. So majority of our funding program is linked to guaranteed debt, and you will see there that up until the committed and what has been utilized, we only have 14 billion that is remaining in terms of the 350 billion. Now this doesn't mean I'm not saying that Eskom is going to government and saying we need more. Important principle to highlight here is, once you repay some of that guaranteed debt, that amount then becomes available to Eskom again following the necessary process. So we have managed to raise the 53 billion thus far for this financial year. We are confident that what we're working on will execute the remaining funding requirement for FY19 and what is required for FY 2020. And with the support of the board, National Treasury in particular, with regard to the government guarantees, we think we can manage to execute that. Now, Eskom has costs, and as the chairman said, it has to be paid. It doesn't go away. It's not free. So yes, we've dealt with funding the debt side of our inflows. Let's not forget the other key inflow as revenue to Eskom is the regulatory process and its mechanisms. It does currently include a normal application, the MYPD4 that we've put in for the 15%, as well as the regulatory clearing accounts. And we have submitted the 21.6 billion for the last year of MYPD3. I think just to remind the audience is, yes, the board has supported the review of the 5.23% for this financial year. We're still awaiting a court date. We've also are awaiting the detailed reasons for decision from the regulator on the 32 billion compared to the 66 which we've asked for. And if we believe there are merits in reviewing that decision, that's a recommendation we would make to the board. And the point here is we are not seeking to make massive profits. We want to recover what is efficient and what is consistent with the MYRPD methodology and what is consistent with previous decisions of the regulator. I think the reality is this. When we come back in January, the public hearings start on MYPD 4 as well as the RCA. And the 1st of March 2019, that's the indication we have from NERSA. That's an important date into a contributing factor to Eskom's sustainability, and we keenly await that decision. The reality is that investors, stakeholders look at the regulator's decisions very closely, and it's a tough choice to make. But at the end of the day, the regulator needs to balance the needs of the consumer but a sustainable utility. It's pointless to go too much on the one side and then you have a utility that is not viable into the future. From the review that was done by the auditors, effectively the situation remains consistent with March. In terms of IFRS compliance and treatment, we are aligned and auditors are comfortable with our disclosure and our adoptions. There's no concerns from their side. The reality is that the going concern, as highlighted by the chairman and the CE, from the auditor's perspective, they see that as material uncertainty. This was the big deliberation at the board meeting for the release of this financials, and you will see once it's uploaded on our website the disclosure that the directors have made to deal with the risk mitigating factors and what is required from an Eskom perspective. We have got a support letter from National Treasury that acknowledges the strategic importance of Eskom as an asset, and they will support us. In terms of the PFMA, there was no review done at interims, but you will see, I'll just touch on a slide. We have done a lot, but where we are now, we need a lot more work between now and year end to be in a situation to present the evidence to the auditors that will prevent a repeat of a qualification around PFMA. So effectively what we've done is that especially on emergencies and sole source procurement, we've seen the trend go in the correct direction. We're still addressing some issues that have arisen thus far for the first 6 months. And in terms of policies and procedures, over and above what we've revised and circulated to the business on the 1st of April this year, we've got in some external support just to give us an independent review and analysis of that. And as part of the process, we are working closely with National Treasury to address some of the condemnations in terms of PFMA breaches that were incurred previously. So the financial outlook, I think the reality is this. When we started the year and we had the 5.23%, we made a lot of assumptions on the finances. We've made a lot of technical assumptions in terms of EAF for generation, as well as OCGT usage and stock days. And with the 5.23, the board approved a budget that reflects a 11.2 billion loss before tax for this financial year. That was the budget when we started the year. Now, from what was mentioned earlier, and you realize that that would put a further upward pressure on our costs. So the projection to year-end March, from where we sit now, is that Eskom will make a loss which is worse than what we budgeted for at the start of this financial year. The reality is this, as the chairman said, we cannot do this alone. We need the support of all stakeholders to firstly arrest the deterioration and then stabilize and move forward. And this, as I mentioned, was highlighted at the board in terms of the going concern assumptions and the sustainability of the organization. I would just like to conclude, and it's not the analogy of the cow, but mine is more the chicken analogy. Does financial sustainability come first or operational sustainability? And at the end of the day, I need the finances to help Jan and the business fix the operational requirements, but I need the operations to produce the electricity, generate the revenue, and then to collect it. So I haven't concluded which one comes first, but the reality is both are critically important for Eskom. Thank you.
Good morning. Media, board members, Group C, CFO, colleagues and other interested parties. From my side, Caleb, congratulations. I believe it's well deserved and well done, and I'm sincerely looking forward to working with you and the Chief to turn the organization in the right direction. So again, well done. Where the presentation at this point in time concentrated for the period till end of September, I will concentrate on giving you feedback for end of October. Our generation performance is not good. And we as Eskom and as the executive are the first to recognize that there's a lot of work to be done. Where we've set ourselves, pardon me, a target of 80% energy availability, we started the year at 75, and as at the end of October, we are 74. So it's coming down. And if I look at the performance in November, it is even more worse. We now in the high 60s. So there is absolutely a lot of work, but I will concentrate on that moving forward. So our availability is not the way it's supposed to be and where we want it to be. Our plant maintenance is running around about 8%, and we will concentrate a lot moving forward on planned maintenance. So even between now and the end of March, we believe that it will increase to the 9% and even above the 9%. But if we talk about the issue that is needing a lot of care and a lot of attention and it's going to take a lot of pain to turn around is the unplanned maintenance. And that's where we're standing at around about 16%. So that's where the focus should be, and I'll spend time on that portion of the generation performance that needs a lot of attention. On the transmission side, for the year, very good performance. I'm extremely pleased and well done to all the teams. However, there are here and there some pointers that is coming out that we have some failures on our equipment. And so we will also spend a lot of time and energy to make sure that we do sufficient and maintenance on the system. Because it's no use you have electron that you've generated, and when you want to put it on the network to sell it, you've got problems. So it's a combination of the operations that we need to maintain properly. The second bullet there say that we have done proper maintenance, the way that we've budgeted. So our transmission network in general is performing well. And again, my sincere appreciation to all the teams. Distribution, also good performance. If you look at our outage duration and outage frequency year on year, and for the first 6 months, a positive improvement. And again, my appreciation to all the teams. Please keep up the good work. In terms of electrification connections for up until the end of October, we on target, a little bit ahead of target, and we believe we will achieve and maybe a little bit exceed our target for year end. If we look at our new build, specifically focus on Medupi and Kusile. On Medupi, units 3 and 2 has been synchronized on the dates in April as well as in October. And then we're pleased to say that in commercial operation, 1,500 megawatts approximately at Medupi 3, just a typo there, and at Kusile unit 1. Then also positive performance on the wire side of our business, a new build. We've installed 540 megawatt MVA transformer capacity, and we've done close to 230 kilometers of high voltage overhead line. So good performance, well done to the team. If we look then a little bit more in detail at our generation performance, and decided to give it to you in a histogram format, where the dark blue is representing the availability, the energy availability. And there we can see that for the month of October, the month specifically, we were below 70%. However, for the year to date, it is on the 74.2. But more important there is to look at that brown bar, and that's where the unplanned maintenance represents itself, where we can see that there is a continuous growth where we have unplanned maintenance, and I'll deal a little bit with that moving forward. So if we look at this performance of our base load, there's a lot of attention and energy necessary, because we would like to get the availability back to the 80%. And now the question is, how quickly are you going to do it? It is not a quick fix. So it's going to take a lot of time, a lot of energy, and a lot of pain to turn this around. But we will turn it around. It's just going to take time. So let's look then at the unplanned side of it. That's 16%. I've decided to break it down and just to give you a feel for what that composes of. On the left-hand side, 5.64% is what we call the full load losses. That is made up by two main components, where we have some of our units that is on a long outage. Duva 4, Kriel 2, Grootvlei 2, and Letaba 5, the incident we had the 10th of October, where we had the main steam pipe rupture, where unfortunately we lost the life of one of our colleagues and another one that was injured, critically injured. So it is to bring those units back. So that contribute out of 5.6, I would say more than 3%, you can see. So it's now to spend time and energy on those to see if we can bring and when we can bring it back quickly. But it's also important, we are not proud of it. You know, we brought Duva 4 back some weeks ago, just to put it back to sleep again. So the quality of work, although it was on an extended outage, took longer than what we planned initially. So when we brought it back, we had problems with it. So, and I'll discuss that a little bit later. So it's to bring back these machines that's on long outages, extended outages. Then the 2.79% represents basically where the units are falling over. When you have trips that you don't want it, it just breaks down. So it's like a vehicle, you're still driving and all of a sudden you're standing next to the road and you don't understand why. So there are some of these unplanned breakdowns that is undesirable that we need to fix. So that component, the fixed load losses, adds up to nearly 6% of our 16%. If we then move to the partial load losses, and for those of you just quickly, it's if you have a vehicle and if you put your foot down, it can do 120. But for some reason, if you put your foot down, it only gives you 80. So there's a design capacity of these units, but when you need it and when you utilize it, you don't get that full capacity from it. So there we have a 6.5%. So you can see that is a significant portion of the 16% that we need to deal with. So the two together, the partial load losses and the fixed load losses, is adding to a 12% of the 16%. So you can understand where the focus, the main focus will be, and I'll deal with that moving forward. Then we have some outage slips. just mentioned Duva 4 now, where we have mainly our subsidiary company, ERI, Eskom Rotec Industries, that is assisting us with the outages. But there you can see the slippages on these outages is contributing, close to 2%. So you can understand there's some work that we need to do in our subsidiary company. So that adds up the three components to nearly 14%, and then we have another sort of a significant component, which we call the boiler tube leaks. We will soon be actively relinking and take the accountability for the running of the power station back to the power station managers. And this will be, amongst all the other things, the boiler tube leaks will be an active component of the performance contract of the power station managers. We used to do it in the past extremely well, but for some reason the focus has been lost on this. And at 1.6%, it's significant. So that is basically the main components that is making up the 16%, the unplanned, the undesirable component of the performance of our networks. We then developed ourselves as a team. We said, okay, so what is wrong? And we identified what is wrong. We then developed this 9-point recovery program some time ago, and I'm pleased to say that it's implemented, so we are actually working on this program, and it's managed by my office specifically. So I'm on a weekly basis looking at the progress and ensuring that there is positive progress. Because these 9 items, this program is what we need to concentrate on to get our generation performance where we want it to, where we need it to be and where the country need it to be. So we, number one, concentrating, the first item is to fix the new plant. So at Kusile and Medupi, we have new units that is coming online, that is in commercial operation. But unfortunately, we do have some teething problems. It's like any new project that you implement. You do have some teething problems. But what we have done now is we've established a team comprising out of specialists, and they are going around and make sure that wherever we pick up problems, that learning is carried over to the units that still need to be put into commercial operation, specifically Kusile. I've spoken about the fixed load losses and the trips, and I'd like to show you this diagram. Between now and November next year, in a period of the next year, we have planned 59 outages. On the left-hand side, I see you can see it, per unit, per station. When are we going to take it out? And also, what are we going to do? On a weekly basis, the production unit and the outage unit are looking at this. And earlier this morning, when I had my quick feedback, this has now moved from 59 to 62 in the same period. So I think what I'd like to demonstrate to you, there is a dedicated focus on doing the maintenance on our system. Because there is no ways that you can achieve your availability if you don't look after your assets. Okay. Then the third one is to fix those units. The units I've spoken about, Letaba, Kriel, and Duva, is to put a dedicated team on that. Up until now, for whatever reason, the outages, it was managed not from the power station itself. So that accountability is moving back to the power station manager, where there's one individual accountable for the successful outage, and that is a power station manager. Then we will look at the partial load losses and the boiler tube leaks that I've spoken about, and obviously while we're doing this 59 or 63 or whatever the number may be, these planned outages, we will concentrate on getting all those items sorted out. I've spoken briefly about the slips, the outage slips, where I had a long discussion, and ERI is also reporting into my office that we will deal and make sure that we have experienced and skilled teams that will be executing these outages. I believe an issue that sometimes is not receiving a lot of focus, and that is to fix our human capital. As we stand, as I'm standing here, 7 of our power station managers are acting power station managers. Not a desirable situation. So we will soon, as a matter of fact, this afternoon, we will start dealing with that as well as tomorrow, that we get permanency within the power station manager. That we'll get permanent power station managers appointed, because, you know, if you're acting, it's just human that perhaps you're not giving what you're supposed to. So we will give a lot of attention, but that will then also go down to the management level. You know, the engineering, the outreach, the maintenance. It's to make sure that we have strong individuals, and so that you have a strong power station management team that can deal with the challenges, and that we can get back to predictability, to sustainable plant performance, and to have it predictable. We have spoken, the chief as well as the CFO, about to make sure that we have sufficient water and diesel available. So because of the state of our plant, that it's not always available, we rely heavily currently on water, our pump storage dams, as well as burning our diesel open cycle gas turbines. And that's coming at a price. You know, for those of you that don't know, if you run an open cycle gas turbine at full capacity, then you burn close to 14 liters of diesel a second. So you can make the sums. It is extremely expensive. So you're going to understand why the focus is there, to get your base load as sustainable as possible, that you can meet each and every day's peak demands. So our procurement people, and my appreciation to them, to make sure at all times that we have diesel available. My appreciation for that as well. Then we have, about 10 weeks ago, we identified a very experienced individual, and he got a team together to prepare for rain. You know, because our coal stock levels are low, and when the good Lord blesses us with a lot of rain, it's going to pose a significant risk. So 10 weeks ago, this individual and his team went from over the last 10 weeks to each and every power station where it's required, and I'm pleased to say that they manage in all of these power stations, specifically, or more specifically in Mpumalanga, to have a minimum of 3 days strategic stock for rain alone. And the usage of that coal is authorized by my office, by myself, or somebody that I will be delegating. So it's not that anybody can use the coal and leave the other sourcing, you know. So that focus 3 days is for rain alone. And I think then the last of the 9-point program is, how do we ensure that we get the stock levels back to where it's supposed to be? The chief has spoken about some of the things, and I'm not going to talk on all the detailed plans, but I decided to give you this slide, by showing to you where we've been a year ago, that we had more than 40 days. Okay, it does exclude, you know, 2 power stations where we had sufficient coal, but this is on average, we had more than 40 days of coal. And then for various reasons, it started coming down and down till around about here in August, where we hit September at 25 days. And now what I said to you with the rain that's coming, so that is a critical risk for ourselves. So we have placed, and I'm not going to go into the reasons why we are here. The chief has spent some time talking about that. For me, it's more important, how do we fix it? What do we do to get out of this situation that we are? We have placed 28 contracts, and by placing the 28 contracts as well as some other contracts in the pipeline, we forecast that we will follow the green line as you see it on the screen. Is it good enough? No, it's not. Are we nervous? Absolutely, we're nervous. So The team, and I'd really like to thank the team as well for the hard work and good work that they're doing. I really thank you for that. So they then went and they had other initiatives to try and secure 4 million tons between now and the end of March. And should we be successful in getting and sign those contracts, obviously, as soon as possible, that the coal can start flowing, we will follow the blue line. And that's a more desirable situation. But is it realistic? We don't know. So we believe at this point in time, we will be in between the green and the blue line. But I've decided to demonstrate to you that the teams are really doing what they can. And where we do not have the luxury of the cost-plus mines at this point in time, where we have to look at other options, this is what the team is doing, and I really believe that they have done some good work. Of the 4 million, 1.1 has been secured. When I had a break after a little bit earlier today, I asked them, so of the 4, we've got 1.1, so where are we now? They said, it's just over 2, maybe 2.5. Not signed, not committed yet. So there is good progress. So decided just to show you where we stand now with the coal situation. If we look at the energy availability graph here, on the left-hand side, you'll see where we're standing currently, the 74.2, and that was end of October. That's not even end of November. And we believe that we will be going down even more, looking at the performance of our plant. The way it's falling over now, which is not good news. We will go down, which we believe, to a 72, 70, maybe even lower than 72. But then we believe this program that we are currently working on, and will be working over the next few years, because this is not just quickly we do it, we get the program, we work, and then we leave it. It's not. That's a continuous process to ensure the sustainability. So we believe in a year from now, we'll be moving at least to get the trend in the positive direction and to be very close to, the 75% where we started the year. It is not easy to fix a generation system, plant system where we are now. It's going to take time. As I said, it's not a quick fix. But these are the plans that we have in place, the program that we're working on, and we've already seen some positive results. So we believe sincerely this is what we will achieve. I'd like to end my discussion or my presentation with you with this slide on the load shedding, the painful discussion. Because that's what you and myself outside Eskom is feeling, whenever you need to put on the light switch or the plug or whatever. We had some load shedding during this financial year. It was in June, as well as in end of July, when we had the industrial action. But then again, we also had Sunday a week ago on the 17th, the 18th, I think it was the 17th. We had, unfortunately, we had to implement load shedding as well, level 1. And the reason being for 2 weeks, for that week and the week before, we had this heat wave up here in the country specifically, and up here in Gauteng, where we had to, during the day, because of the non-availability of our generation plant, we had to use quite a lot of water. And the water usually you use in the morning peak and the evening peak. But we had to use water throughout the day. We had to burn a lot of diesel throughout the day. And so that Sunday morning, we found ourselves in a situation where we unfortunately had to load shed, because otherwise there was no ways of preserving the diesel we had and being able to pump some of the water back to the upper dams to start the week and not at tremendous risk. So these are the 3 incidents we had of load shedding during this financial year. But it's important for me to say to you that although we're doing a lot, and although we're trying our utmost not to shed any load, with the current situation that we find ourselves in, with the state of our plant, that it's unpredictable, it is not sustainable at this point in time, and also a little bit of the coal shortages, that load shedding is maybe a reality moving forward. As the system is now, and I repeat, as it is now, standing here, we're under pressure. Last night it was under severe pressure because we lost Korabasa, that's over 1,000 megawatts. So it was a critical evening last night, but we managed to pull through. And that is a commitment that we have to the public. We will do whatever we can, but we cannot put the system integrity at risk. The system operator will make the final call. So it's just to say to you that we cannot at this point in time rule out load shedding. And what is also important, when I showed you, the planned maintenance for the next year, if we don't do the maintenance, we're just going to continue where we are now. So there may be instances where to do maintenance, we may be forced to implement rotational, limited load shedding. Chairperson, thank you. That's my presentation.
Kudu will take over. Now we go to questions.
Oh, it's gone.
No. Okay. Come. Okay, thank you so much. In conclusion, what exactly are we saying? We're saying we're facing operational and financial challenges, but we're saying we are aware of that. And we're telling you that we have initiated activities or initiatives that are earmarked to deal with these issues. Are they sufficient to take us through? No, they are not. Then we further said there are further initiatives that will take us forward. Whether it's a 9-point program that Jan was talking about, or it's a program that I alluded and spoke about, that talks about the comprehensive strategy that will save us about 32 billion. That is what we're going to do. But again, that is not sufficient. Ultimately, what we are requesting here is the partnership. Partnership between Eskom as an entity that is owned and belongs to the South Africans, with the taxpayers, with the shareholder, and with our clients. Because it is only through that partnership that this place will be turned around and be sustainable and go back to its time. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, leadership, for the presentation, comprehensive presentation that was made. The focus is now on yourselves, ladies and gentlemen. And maybe before I start, today is Antona's birthday. Happy birthday from Eskom.
Happy birthday.
Anthony.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Chweu. We do have some tea and water outside after this. We can't afford anything else, so tea and coffee will do. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take, I'll say, a few rounds of questions just to clarify things. I was checking with the chairman because he needed to leave by 12:30, so maybe the first round of questions were possible. Let's take from here. I see, I'm going to start on my right-hand side. I see Terence, and then I see behind Terence, I see forgotten. Angela, sorry, man, Angela. And then I see the lady just before him. So for now, maybe let's limit ourselves to these three, just as a start, I suppose. Then other people will warm up going forward. Terence?
Chairman, in terms of the long-term turnaround strategy versus the long-term turnaround plan versus the strategy 2035, is it out of the same thing or are they two different documents that are currently in circulation? If they are the same thing, when do we see implementation of the long-term turnaround strategy? And what is required to get us to the point where we've got that all approved and ready to move ahead? In terms of that too, the ring fencing, is it going to be crudely ring fence in terms of generation, transmission, distribution? Or is there more nuanced ring fencing that is envisaged within this long-term turnaround strategy? And then in terms of production of debt, people, primary energy and debt, in terms of production of debt, one of the ideas which we were off the table was the solving debt for equity. Is that definitely off the table? And if it is, what are the other options to reduce debt? And are asset sales being contemplated again? So that, really just a very point of clarity from Dan, if I may. Just what is BEA and measure banks? Is it the full megawatts that are installed in the system, including nuclear or water, or is it only the coal piece? And if it's only the coal piece, does it include the commercial operating units? And which of the 15 power stations are also included? I understand there are certain units at 15 power stations that are no longer there, coal reserve. So what is in that 72% or 74%?
Thank you, Terence. Angela?
Here we go. Angelo Coppola from China Global Television. Two questions, and either for the CFO or for the chair. How much of the government guarantee that you currently hold has been spent, and how much will be spent by year end? And then secondly, will you continue supplying those defaulting municipalities with power? I mean, you're talking about a conversation that's happening, but what's the plan?
Thank you, Angelo. If you can pass it. Okay, yes, sure. Thank you. Let's try another one. Did you have another mic there, Swazi?
Hi, Lisa Stain from Business Day. I would just like to know the long-term plan. You talk about revenue enhancement. Could you give us any idea what that would entail, any examples of what that might look like? Then on the emergency coal procurement, now that it appears you've opened it up to the market, are there any constraints on those in terms of BEE requirements or anything like that?
Thank you, Lisa. Mr. Harebe and the CE, you can take the questions from that side because I understand that the camera people prefer that way. So the floor is now yours, Mr. Harebe.
I'm not Khatebe yet. I would like to get his salary. The plan, this is the same plan. 2035 is a plan. It's just that 2035 it's so far out. This is how we can, what is it that we need to do in the now that would put us at the no regret point towards that 2035. The second question you asked was about timing. We don't think we have any more time. We've got to implement this plan from now. As I indicated, if we were to just sit tight and do nothing, we will have a different conversation this time next year. So the plan that we are currently socializing with the various stakeholders, and just to update you, We've been working with our responsible minister, the shareholder representative, our Minister of Public Enterprises. So we've worked with him various iterations of this plan. Yesterday we took the president through this particular plan. We do have other ministry stakeholders that are key for this, i.e. energy and treasury. So we also, as I indicated, need to find the space to have a conversation with labor as well. And of course, we welcome some of your thoughts and your input. Ring fencing, essentially what we're talking of. Part of the challenge we are faced with when we deal with the regulator is we produce a number that seems to be coming out of a big pot that it's not very, very clear, very opaque, so that you cannot even counter when you say a cost is a cost. This costs this costs that. So for us, I know no other way of running, even in my own household. There are people that are working in the garden, there are people that are working in the kitchen, there are people that are working at the gate. I don't have just employees. I just don't have a household. I have the inside of the house, the outside of the house. So it's not different. In a business, you need to be able to break this or separate this. I use the term functional separation so that we can look at generation as generation. If we want to compare generation, we compare generation with generation in a particular universe. We look at transmission as transmission. Look at distribution as distribution. Look at our sales work as sales. Then you are in a position to can determine, firstly, the transparency that is going to give you as a manager is you would know where the problems are. But also when you talk to outsiders, third parties, you can talk about a conversation that we all are using the same set of facts and we're using the same set of benchmark, we're using the same set of a universe. Debt to equity swaps, yes. We did think about this as an option, but we soon got taught that this is bad news. We actually have been given to understand just how dangerous that route could be. For a start, if you take our own major debt provider here at home, the PIC. The PIC uses pensioners' money. On lending money on the basis of them getting interest, they have a certain assurance that they can actuarially forecast when they would get their money so that they can meet their commitments to their pensioners. If you now want them to convert that to have shares in a loss-making company, it's just a dangerous route. So if we can't do it with the PIC, why would international funders and bondholders allow us to do that? So we soon realized that that was not going to be the right route. So we are in no way going to be proposing debt equity swaps to our debt holders. There are other ways. Call them what you want. You want to call them a bailout. You want to call them equity injection by the shareholder. At the end of the day, this asset belongs to South Africa, held by the president on behalf of South Africans. So for any business to fund the business, you need shareholder equity and a bit of debt. If you can't find debt, the owner of the business has to come to the party. So there are various ways that may, as I say, I don't want to, as you'd appreciate that I have not yet been to talk to the Minister in Finance, But we don't want to be that exhaustive, but there's a range of options. They range, as I said, from equity injection and or some debt relief. There are those options. We have also been satisfied in the work that we've done that the market has got a certain view about what we owe now. Even on the guaranteed debt, they've got a view about that. And the question gonna be, this debt at the end of the day, because by share guarantee, by extension, it's government's debt. So we are looking at ways in which that can be done. On asset sales, yeah, there is very little we can sell. As a start, we had to look at what EBITDA margins each of our plants can give. And we've accepted that anything that gives you, our average is the 21% that we're currently getting. So anything that you're gonna sell has to be giving you less than 21. And you must sell it to someone who believes they can make it, they can do better on that asset other than yourself. Now, the only asset that is sellable would be the uncompleted Medupi and Gusile. Now, those are the best performing of our assets. If the average is 21, they are at 60. So to sell that asset goes back to the point that Calip was making and Jan. You are in the business of generating electricity. If you take the one that generates electricity and sell it, what business will you be remaining in? Secondly, we know that the asset that is standing now at 95% completion has cost us almost double what it should have cost us. So why would anybody pay you double for it anyway if they were going to sell it, buy it from you? And still you have to go back to them and buy the electricity. So it's an non-starter. So all the assets that we could sell are the assets that no one can buy. The one that anyone can buy, they will have to pay us half what it has cost us. The fact that it has cost more does not mean it did not cost more. We just should have built it for cheaper and quicker. So asset sales, really the only asset that we spoke about, we continue to talk about, is the Eskom housing finance company. It's not going to change much of our situation. So asset sale is not an option. Everybody, even if you want to sell your house, you have to put a lick of paint and just change it. The numbers that we're talking about, the 10 stations that we're looking at fixing, would cost a lot of money. So we don't think selling asset is a solution. Angelo, Jan will talk about the electricity available factor. Angelo, guarantee is currently at 336 billion of 350. The municipality supply, the board has interrogated this point very, very, very intensely. Because there's a part where we become reckless as directors. That you continue to supply a non-paying customer with the full knowledge that they won't pay you. That is on the income statement side. On the balance sheet, there's a particular way you need to treat a debtor that you know you're not going to be able to collect. So we are caught up in those. And you would be aware that we also have some legal challenges when we try and cut supply. So it is in this vein that we sit in that interministerial task committee to look at this problem. But once more, we need to just break it down into different chunks. Because if you look at it as a 23 billion problem, you want to cry. So we are working with the COCTA to look at who is not paying who can afford to pay. Who is not paying, who just cannot afford to pay. Who is not paying, who can but does not pay because there are others who are not paying. So we are working on that, and we have agreed through a certain moratorium to give this effort from COGTA an opportunity to try and solve this. So once more, this all goes back to that 23 billion. If we don't want to trade recklessly, we must go and borrow money to cover for it. Jan, you want to talk about what is the formula of your electricity available factor?
Thank you, Chairman. Energy availability refers to all commercial units. So it's only commercial units. And it includes the fossil fuel, coal, nuclear, gas. Then your question around the units, and I suppose you referred to Grootvlei, Kumati, and Enrina, the units not in commercial operation anymore is not included in the EAF.
Sorry, Lisa, could you repeat your question? I think all, because we are trying to. It's about revenue. What had happened before is that during the challenges that Eskom was facing in 2008, 2009 or so, we enticed some of the heavy energy users to look at other options. But this year we then decided to go back to them and say, we have about 500 MW that can be used as a pigeonhole, some kind of a case study. Will you be interested? We talked to about 12 or so. Out of these 12, 9 of them were interested to come back to us. So there is a market that is ready, available for us if we harness it very well. So we're going to do that. But over and above that, we are currently talking to about 4 countries within the continent that have an appetite on our own electricity. And that would be one of the areas we're looking into.
I also wanted to know about what the parameters are for procuring coal now in this emergency situation. Are there EU requirements as sort of constraints in the market?
I think, are you asking us whether we're providing, are we selling coal only to 50+1 black-owned business?
I'm asking if in this emergency allocation of treasury less revenue, whether you can procure from anyone, regardless of infrastructure.
Yes, we can. We can go and procure anyone who has coal, and that's what we've been doing. And we've been signing new contracts with people that were not offering us before. And in fact, what we have done, one of the things that created some kind of a conflict in the way and the manner we've been operating with the coal mining sector has been the kind of a relationship that we have that has not been that great. We've gone back to them and we've been talking to them, and we've seen the large number of them coming back. You might recall that I indicated that one of the challenges we're facing was that when Eskom went out into the market early this year, the appetite was not there, but they are steadily coming back. We're seeing the numbers, hence the 29 that we have right across the market.
Well, put in another way, and perhaps in a more direct way. For the record, we don't have a policy at Eskom that says we will buy from 51% black-controlled mines. We do not have that policy. we are gravitating to saying we should not reinvent the wheel. There's the mining charter that has got a policy on BEE. We should use that as a point of reference, and the triple P, what is this public procurement? Triple PFA. Those are the guidelines. And Pagamani is correct. We'll buy coal from anyone who can sell us coal. That is if they are legally mining. Because if they are legally mining, they are regulated by the Minerals Department and they are subjected to the mining charter.
Thank you, Chair. We're going to take another round of questions. I see Antoinette, and then I see Mr. Ted Blom, and then Chris Yelland, and then I see Alex. So if you don't mind, I'll take those four, and then we'll see how it goes. Antoinette?
Antoinette Slowett from Raleigh. Could you first tell us what the projected loss to the will be at BAE? And then, with the legislation regarding the municipal disconnections, the other day, for example, Eskom was not even in court. And also during some of the disciplinary hearings that were open for the media, there was some questions about the quality of Eskom's legal department. Do you think at the moment that the legal department is capable or adequate to support all the litigation you are involved with and the level you are operating at? And then just for clarification, this 51% black-owned mine, black requirement, was that policy changed? And if so, when was it changed? So it used to be policy.
Thank you, Antoinette. If we can pass it to Chris. Oh, you do have it. Okay.
Yeah, good morning. Chris Yelland here from EE Publishers. Can I just ask you, we've heard a lot about financial sustainability, and we've heard a lot about operational sustainability, but it seems that environmental sustainability is the sacrificial lamb that will just suffer the consequence because, well, it's an easy way out. There is some issues at the moment about SO2, sulfur dioxide compliance regulations that have been mysteriously weakened to the benefit of Eskom and Sasol, which are in fact going to be facing a legal challenge shortly. My question really is, what are you going to do about environmental sustainability, which is a big issue in this world that we live in today? And it appears that every one of your power stations, perhaps excluding Kusile, does not comply with the environmental sustainability requirements of South Africa, and you keep on applying and rolling over postponements in such compliance, time after time again, and this is going to be challenged legally shortly. And my question is, what are you going to do about this and the money involved in achieving environmental sustainability and compliance? Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Ted?
Thank you. I think I've got three questions, Mr. Pasiwe. The first one is, I'm in total confusion when I sit today and I listen to what we've been told, compared to what I hear was said in Parliament about a week ago. And I want to illustrate it with a few points. Firstly, we were told via Parliament that there would be no load shedding. And today the tears are just about running again about load shedding. When I was here a week ago, we were told there would be load shedding. So it seems to me there's different messages for different audiences. The second issue is the chairman referred to assets of 800 billion. The NYPD that's currently under discussion talks about assets of 1.4 trillion. There seems to be a mismatch as to how big or how small this organization is. The chairman talked about segmented accounts as being part of the solution. The very financial director that's now been affirmed today is the same person who told NERSA at the last hearings that segmental accounting was not practical for Eskom. There seems to be another disjoint in what's going on. As far as the coal situation is concerned, I think it's a joke. It's a very tragic joke. And let me tell you why. Because I was part of a team in this organization that did a 2030 coal plan in 2007. And myself and other people confirmed that it would be a coal cliff in 2015. It's now 2018. These small, short-term